Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are nearing the start of the 2027 season. Just finished spring training. The Royals had a 12-11 record. Big goals this year for the Royals. Ownership wants us to reach the playoffs, and ownership also wants us to reach the World Series this year. And quite honestly, this is probably the best opportunity for the Royals to make a long run with the way the team has been constructed. Salary situation is going to be significantly different next season, even though we have several important players, Nico Horner, Kyle Lewis, and Aaron Ashby, most notably among them, who we don't have signed for next season. Our team salary is going to be at least projected about $18 million more than it is this year, because we're going to have a lot of players starting to hit expensive arbitration years. So we're going to have to be making a lot of changes to this roster in the offseason, most likely. You can see we've got no money available for extensions with the high expectations for big salaries next season. We do have close to $8 million to potentially take on some contracts as this season moves along. We are projected to have a pretty good season, projected to win 97 games this year, which would be the second most in baseball behind only the San Diego Padres. So optimistic that hopefully these Royals can put together a fifth consecutive winning season and a third consecutive playoff appearance. Unfortunately, in both of those playoff appearances over the last two seasons, the Royals have been one and done. So although ownership wants us to not just reach the playoffs, but make it to the World Series, and that's obviously our goal. We want to try to win it all. But the big goal for us is just going to be to win a playoff series this year and prove that the Royals can actually do that. We're feeling real optimistic about our chances to do that with this team until right at the end of spring training, when unfortunately we suffered about the worst injury that this organization possibly could. Trevor Rogers, our number one starting pitcher, last year's American League Cy Young Award winner, is out for 11 to 12 months at this point with a torn flexor tendon in his elbow. So last year's Cy Young Award winner, our number one starter, is gone. That is obviously a huge blow for the Royals, but at least we know where we stand, and we kind of know what the rotation looks like is the beginning of the season. Spencer Bauer is going to move into the number one role, Caleb Lagerwell number two, the youngster Ricky Vanasco number three, JT Ginn, who we made a trade for during the offseason, will be our fourth starter. And then Hayden Wesneski in again as number five. Mackenzie Gore presumably will be the first person used in the rotation by manager Byron Nichols if he decides that he wants to make some changes or if anyone gets hurt. But with the loss of Rogers for the whole year and really Ginn being the only significant change we've made to our entire pitching staff, everyone else has kind of been here either full-time last year or in bits and pieces for some of the younger players. There's no question that our rotation is weaker and our overall pitching staff is going to be weaker in 2027 than it was in 2026. That said, last year we had the best pitching staff in the American League. So even though we're certainly going to be weaker without Rogers, hopefully we can still be one of the top handful of staffs in the American League in terms of our production and low ERA, striking out some batters, not giving up too many hits, and most importantly, not allowing our opponents to score very many runs. In turning to our lineup as the season begins, only one real significant change. We traded away Nick Pratto, which will open up first base and DH for the youngsters Zach DeCenzo and Peyton Williams, get them regular at-bats on a daily basis. Feel like we upgraded our backup infielder spot with Jose Barrero, and then we have brought on Jason Dominguez on board as a Rule 5 draft pick from the Cubs. We'll see if we can keep him up all year. and kind of get the full-time rights to him. Obviously, if things don't work out, we can send him back. But think that with the loss of Rogers, our pitching is obviously going to be worse than it was last year, but hopefully will still be a strength. And feel that our offense may actually be a little bit better with DeCenzo and Williams getting more regular at-bats than Prado, and better utility infielder in Barrero for when the likes of Nico Horner, Bobby Witt Jr., and Nicky Lopez either need a day off and or get injured. So optimistic that the offense will be just as good as or better, and hopefully we can have another 90-plus win season. And as I talked about, the goal is always to win it all. Think that the window on this roster is closing with this season. So even though we've lost Rogers, we are all in on the 2027 season. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, we've got about $8 million. So as we get closer to the trade deadline, we'll be able to take on some one-year contracts and hopefully add some talent wherever we need it as this season gets rolling. In the early days of the season are going okay for the Royals, off to a 6-4 start. Evan Miller, who was another Rule 5 draft choice of us last offseason, is now healthy. No obvious spot for him in our rotation for the 31-year-old, but we are going to send him to a rehab assignment down in AAA for the next month, see how he does there. And then if we don't have any injuries among our pitching staff, then we'll have to make a tough decision as to whether to let him go or to maybe send somebody else who's not performing as well down. And if we do end up having some injuries over the next month, if Miller is pitching well in Omaha, then maybe we'll give him a chance at the major league level. Worst case scenario is we send him back to the Padres if we can't find a spot for him on the major league pitching staff. Peyton Williams, who we talked about earlier, is a little banged up now with a bruised shoulder, but off to a really good start with 4 home runs in his first 9 games. So good to see him getting regular at-bats with Prado off the team now. Zach DeCenzo, the other beneficiary, not hitting quite as well, .237 batting average, and has not hit a home run yet, but hopefully he will begin to hit more as the season moves along also. In the early stages of the season, still going very well for the Royals, 15-7 record, first place in the AL Central. Nico Horner, our longtime second baseman, is looking for a renewal. As we have talked about in previous episodes, think it's unlikely that we're going to offer him this. He's looking for close to $20 million a year over 5 seasons. So we will probably end up making him a qualifying offer this offseason if we don't end up trading him away. But our expectation is that the youngster Ricardo Cabrera, who we picked up from the Yankees several years ago in the Salvador Perez trade, 22 years old this year, getting his first full season at Omaha where he's batting .300 right now, will hopefully be taken over for us at second base next season. So worst case scenario is we submit a qualifying offer to Nico Horner before the next offseason and hopefully get some draft compensation. If things go really poorly for the Royals, then we could certainly look to deal Horner before the trade deadline this year to get something a little closer to major league ready for him potentially, particularly if Cabrera is playing well in AAA. But I certainly don't think that's the base case scenario, given that we are off to a good start and we are in a win now position. I think our goal is to keep Mr. Horner around for his last season with the Royals and try to make a long run in the playoffs. Peyton Williams continues to have a real great season for us so far with a 1.216 OPS, 10 homers, and only 15 RBIs and 67 at-bats. So he is just crushing the ball right now, but a lot of solo homers, obviously second in the league, tied for second in the league in batter war with his teammate Young-Hoo Lee, who is batting a blistering .383 so far. So a couple of big starts offensively, and then looking at our pitching staff, Austin Roberts leads the league in saves, and the young starter Ricky Vanasco with a glittering 1.19 ERA and a 3-0 record so far. So pretty good start for the Royals. Hopefully we can keep it up over the coming weeks. And the month of April is over. The Royals have got a 19-12 record. So pretty competitive American League Central so far this year. We are up by a game on the Twins and 4 games on the Guardians and the Tigers. Haven't been playing as well lately with just a 5-5 record over our last 10 games. Peyton Williams still having a real big year. Same thing with Young Hoo Lee. Both of those guys are really hammering the ball in the early stages of this season, so hopefully they can continue to hit well. Looking at some of the statistics for the Royals over these early weeks of the season, we should be a game better than we are. As always, we're kind of underperforming our Pythagorean expectations, but went 4-2 in March, followed by a 15-10 April, off to a solid start. We are only 12th in the American League in runs scored, so even though we're hitting for a pretty decent batting average, pretty good in OPS, pretty good in pitcher WAR, not striking out much, have not scored very many runs, but our pitching, even without Trevor Rogers, has been brilliant. First in the American League, allowing just 105 runs through our first 31 games, so that has made up for offense that is a little bit below average at this point. Defense is doing okay, still fairly active on the base paths, so solid start for the Royals. No injuries thus far of any import during the first month of the season. And we have reached decision time with our Rule 5 acquisition, Evan Miller. You can see his profile is a bit above average in terms of his stuff and his movement, acceptable control, and 3 decent pitches, including a really nice curveball. He has not pitched much at the major league level over the course of his career, just 11 2/3 innings, 1.33 ERA plus, and an 89 FIP minus in that limited amount of action that the soon-to-be 32-year-old right-hander has had in the majors. So certainly looks like he could be a competent major league arm. The issue is just that I don't really know who we would send down to open up a spot for him. Spencer Bauer having a decent season, Caleb Lagerwell, Ricky Vanasco, and Hayden Wisniewski, all pretty solid as starters. JT Ginn has kind of been a bit of a disaster for us in the rotation. 2-4 record with a 7.80 ERA across 7 starts for us. Obviously a small sample size, but certainly has not pitched as well as we would have hoped for the new addition. But I don't even know if he has options. He does have 2 option years left. I guess we could potentially send Ginn down. We're paying him a lot of money, $3.3 million, to send him to the minors. But he definitely has not been effective as a starter. I guess the other option is we could move him to the bullpen, and then that would most likely enable manager Byron Nichols, I would think most likely, would then move Mackenzie Gore into the rotation. So we could give that a chance. Austin Roberts has been incredible. 16 games pitched, has not allowed an earned run. Scott Kobos, lefty specialist, has been very good. Already talked about Gore, who's been solid in a long relief role. Reed Goleman, solid as usual. Will Goebel having a nice year. R.J. Dabovich, another solid season out of the bullpen. Aaron Ashby, another lefty, very good. And then Nick Anderson, the veteran, has been brilliant. So there's no obvious player for us to send down to the minors, unfortunately, to open up a spot for Evan Miller. And given that Miller's going to be 32 years old soon, he's still actually older than every pitcher on our major league team except for Nick Anderson. And Anderson is a well-established major league reliever, having a really nice year for us this year. And we also have him for practically nothing, maybe completely nothing. Yeah, the Yankees kept 100% of his salary when we traded some prospects for him. So I don't think we get rid of him, so the question is just whether we want to send JT Ginn down to the minors. Honestly, I think what I'm really going to do right now is force Ginn into a reliever role and see what that makes Mr. Nichols want to do for his pitching staff. And he does put up Mackenzie Gore as our fifth starter. I think I'd like to see how Gore does with a little bit of action as a starter for us rather than a long reliever. So now the question is whether we want to give Ginn the opportunity to pitch in middle relief for a while or to bring up Miller. And quite honestly, I like Ginn better. We made a trade for him. I think just looking at his pitching profile, he should be a better pitcher. Does have the option to start, even though he hasn't been all that effective at it. And he's also been a bit above average as a major league pitcher during the course of his career, obviously over a bigger sample size than Miller, and he's also almost 5 years younger than Miller. So Miller, I think, could be a pretty useful pitcher, but given that our pitching staff is so good, just don't think that we've got a spot for him right now. The change we're going to make is moving Mackenzie Gore into the rotation. And Mr. Miller, we are going to unfortunately release you and send you back to the San Diego Padres. Best of luck to you. And as we near the end of May, the Royals still playing incredible baseball, 35-21 record. So we are up by 4.5 games on the White Sox in the American League Central. Young-Hoo Lee still leading the AL in batting. Peyton Williams still leading the AL in home runs. Bobby Witt Jr. tied for the league lead in stolen bases. So pretty good offense so far from the Royals this season, at least from a few individual players. And then Austin Roberts continues to have a brilliant year. 2-0 record, 17 saves in a 0.33 ERA thus far. Did just suffer the first somewhat material injury of the season for the team. Nicky Lopez strained oblique, going to have a moderate impact on him overall. So he's out for the next 2 weeks. We will send him to the 10-day IL just to make sure that we don't fool around and let that injury turn into anything more serious than it is. And that will give us an opportunity to bring up another infielder. I think could go in a couple of different directions. We do have Barrero on the big club, as I mentioned, who can play second, third, and short. He has not gotten a ton of playing time yet, started only 14 games so far, so in batting just 203 for us with a 46 OPS plus. So has had a disappointing bat so far for us, but this is the type of situation that we kind of brought him on board for. Going to be without starting shortstop for the next week and a half to 2 weeks, so Barrero will get a little playing time there. I think the decision is just whether we want to bring up the veteran Orlando Arcia, the defensive whiz Melvin Moreno, or the youngster Ricardo Cabrera to see what he can do at the major league level. And we've always loved Melvin Moreno's glove ever since we signed him as a minor league free agent. Hitting not that great in Omaha for us this year, just a 242 batting average, but that glove is certainly more than adequate for a major leaguer. We're also kind of getting to the point where Moreno could start making a little more money. Still not quite eligible for arbitration. Has only had 1 year and 153 days of major league service. But I'm going to give him a shot, the first shot to come up to the major league level. It's actually possible, I think, that Byron Nichols will put him in as the starting shortstop over Barrero just because he's so good defensively. Let's see what Nichols wants to do. Yeah, he's actually putting Moreno in on an everyday basis at shortstop. So at least we'll have the glove out there. Still would like to find a few more at-bats for Mr. Barrero. Presumably there will probably be some opportunities over the next couple of weeks where he will be pinch hitting for Mr. Moreno given his offensive shortcomings. So we'll see if hopefully Nichols does a good job of getting them both a little playing time over these next few weeks. Just checking in on Jason Dominguez, our Rule 5 acquisition, has actually hit reasonably well for us. 319 batting average with 2 homers and 11 ribbies in 91 at-bats, is a backup outfielder for us, although he has started 21 of our 56 games. So, a little bit of playing time for him. We'll continue to see if he can be a productive player for us. And, he's not the same defensive player that Kyle Lewis is in center field, but Kyle Lewis is going to be moving on at the age of 32, most likely at the end of this year, given the financial situation these Royals are in. So although Dominguez doesn't profile as good of a defensive center fielder, right now he is definitely someone who could potentially be our starting center fielder for opening day 2028. So I want to get a good look at him over the course of the next several months of this 2027 season. And a nice achievement by our star Bobby Witt, 43 consecutive stolen bases. That is quite a streak by Mr. Witt, who, checking in on, him offensively, actually, the streak just came to an end. He was 40 stolen bases with just 1 caught stealing when he tied for the league lead with teammate Sal Frelick last season. Not hitting so well this year, just a 248 batting average, 5 homers, 28 driven in through his first 56 games, 80 OPS plus, which is really bad for a player of Bobby Witt Jr.'s caliber. So hopefully he can turn this season around over the next few months. And Nicky Lopez is ready to come back. Confused him with Nico Horner. Nicky Lopez ready to come back from the IL. Melvin Moreno was kind of a disaster offensively. Just 2 hits and 20 at-bats while he was getting significant playing time while Lopez was out, but obviously very pleased to have Lopez back at this point. Just checking in on JT Ginn. You'll remember he had a 7.80 ERA as a starter. He's pulled the ERA for the season down to 5.47 at this point, so has been much more productive out of the bullpen. And then looking at Mackenzie Gore, he's actually continued to pitch well in his 5th starter role for us with a 2.14 ERA on the season so far, 58 strikeouts in 54 2/3 innings. So seems like that was a decent move so far. Certainly like to let the manager make as many decisions as possible when we're playing in GM-only mode, but if we see something that we don't like, we will change it on the margins, and we did that at this point. 39-26 record for the Royals here on June 6th, up by 3.5 on the White Sox in the AL Central. And we do have the best record in the American League, but it's pretty competitive with Toronto and Seattle, as well as the White Sox, all within a couple of games, 3.5 games of us, and within 2 games or 3 games of the within 3 games of us in the win column. Young-Hoo Lee slowing down a bit, still leads the AL in batting average at 325. And Peyton Williams is now only tied for the American League with 19 home runs. So he has slowed down a bit, has not hit a homer in over a week at this point, I think. But hopefully can continue to get good production out of those players and continued good pitching from our pitching staff as we head towards the midpoint of this 2027 season. Have a little bit of an interesting decision to make with our star third baseman, Bobby Witt Jr. Day-to-day with knee tendonitis, but going to need about 4 weeks till he's 100%. Going to have a moderate impact on his running ability. Shouldn't impact his hitting or throwing. Royals have definitely slowed down recently, not playing as well as we were. We're still in first place by 3.5 games now over the Guardians rather than the White Sox, but 4-6 in our last 10, winning percentage down to .573. Still actually the best record in the American League, a bit surprising. There seems to be a lot of parity in the AL. You look over in the NL, though, and between the Braves, the Brewers, the Cardinals, and the Padres, 4 teams over there with winning percentages over 600. So, some parity in the AL. I think we can probably survive without Mr. Bobby Witt Jr. for a while. So we're going to put him on the 10-day IL. Hope maybe he heals up a little bit quicker from that. In putting him on the IL, Ricardo Cabrera is healthy again. He's played 56 games down in AAA, batting .259. He's unhappy, wants to be in the majors, 22 years old. As I've talked about, there's a good chance that he will be our starting second baseman next year. Has the versatility to play second and third at a pretty solid level, and can play short in a pinch if we need him to. Given that he could be taking over for Nico Horner next season as our starting second baseman. And I guess there is a chance if he comes up and plays a lot and hits incredibly, there's a chance he could be taking over as our starting second baseman very shortly. We still do have the option to try to deal away Mr. Horner if we want, although I think, as we've talked about earlier in this episode, our plan right now is going to be to make him a qualifying offer for the draft pick and likely let him go in the off season. But we are going to stop playing Cabrera only at second base and bring the youngster who, along with Hayden Wisniewski, who has been a key member of our pitching staff for the past several seasons, was the other key acquisition that we got when we traded away Salvador Perez to the Yankees at the start of this playthrough. So going to start to find out exactly what the 22-year-old Ricardo Cabrera can do at the major league level. Looking at what Nichols wants to do with our lineup, he's going to put Cabrera right in there on a daily basis. He's going to take over as our starting third baseman for Bobby Witt Jr. while he is on the IL. So at least we'll be getting some consistent at-bats and see what Cabrera can do with his bat here at the major league level. And we've made it to the midway point of the season, 46-34 record, still first in the AL Central, but only up 2.5 games on the Guardians, 5 up on the White Sox, 6 up on the Tigers, and 7 up on the Twins. You can see a lot of teams right around 500, and then the Royals and the Guardians playing a little better in the division. Ownership, reasonably pleased with how we're doing. Think that we can meet our goal of getting into the playoffs. Certainly hope that we can do that as well. So team has definitely slowed down in terms of our performance recently. We can certainly see that if we look at the team stat reports. We're not even playing 500 ball here in June. Played exactly 600 winning percentage in both April and May, but a pretty mediocre June so far with a 9-10 record. 7th in the league in runs scored, so the offense has improved a bit over the last month and a half since we checked in, and still first in the American League in runs allowed. And you can see we are first in virtually every pitching category. The only exceptions are we're third in the league in BABIP and second in the league in walks, but a excellent pitching staff here for the Royals, even though we are without our ace, Trevor Rogers. And looking at that excellent pitching staff over the first half of the year, you can see our number 1 and 2 starters, Spencer Bauer and Caleb Lagerwell, both 7-3 records. Ricky Vanasco, the youngster, 8-4. Hayden Wisniewski is 5-1, and Mackenzie Gore has only started 8 games, but has a 4-3 record with a 2.15 ERA on the season so far. So haven't had any significant injuries into the rotation since in the rotation since the season started. The only change we have made is moving Ginn into the bullpen, where he has pitched somewhat better than he did as a starter, and giving Gore some opportunity to fill in as our fifth starter. We've talked a lot about Austin Roberts, our closer, 20 saves already, 0.52 ERA, and 43 strikeouts in 34 2/3 innings. So he has been excellent for us. Lefty specialist Scott Kobos with a 1.12 ERA. Reed Goleman 2.47 ERA. Will Goebel 2.51. RJ Dabovich 2.57, Aaron Ashby 1.54, and Nick Anderson 1.87. So getting just brilliant pitching out of our bullpen, and also really nice pitching out of our starting rotation. So the pitching staff has been the strength of this team for most of this playthrough, and certainly seems that it is continuing to perform well here in the first half of the 2027 season. And turning to the Royals hitters, Peyton Williams and Zach DeCenzo, the two players who benefited most as far as playing time with the trade away of our longtime first baseman Nick Pratto, lead the team with 27 homers by Peyton Williams and 14 by DeCenzo. Nobody else on the active roster has more than 7. MJ Melendez with 7. We can see that Bobby Witt Jr. would also be up there for the Royals with 6 home runs, but he is still on the IL, given that we wanted to give a little bit of an opportunity to our young infielder Ricardo Cabrera. Has played 4 games so far, batting .250, driven in a run, so he has been a competent hitter for us so far, but nothing exceptional. Looking at players hitting for a bit higher average, Sal Frelick, 16 steals, only caught once, batting .310 on the season. Jason Dominguez hitting .303, the Rule 5 acquisition that we've talked about a lot, who could be in the competition to play center field for us next year. Nico Horner batting .301 at second base, likely in his last season with the team. MJ Melendez, in addition to the 7 home runs, which is third on the team, is hitting .299. So really nice offense there from a catcher. And then Young-Hoo Lee, the right fielder, has definitely slowed down. His batting average has now dipped below 300, .298 on the year for the right fielder. He is another player who could potentially be in the mix to be our starting center fielder next year, but as I mentioned, it's going to be a real interesting offseason, since we're going to be so low on money, and we're going to have to be either trading away some arbitration eligible players, or perhaps even trading away a veteran with a larger salary like Young-Hoo Lee. Going to have some interesting decisions to make next year, but with the likely departure of Kyle Lewis looming, who's batting just .216 this year, Young-Hoo Lee, Jason Dominguez, and then when we go down to AAA, Will Taylor, who is hitting .267 in 270 at-bats at AAA Omaha, are the 3 players in the Kansas City organization right now who would be the most likely candidates to take over in center field for our longtime center field Kyle Lewis next season. But we will worry about next season when we get to that. Right now we are still focused on 2027. Halfway through the season, as we've talked about, 46-34 record, first place in the AL Central, look well positioned to have another winning record and hopefully get back to the playoffs. The question is how long we're going to last in the playoffs and what type of run we'll be able to make. Ownership would like us to reach the World Series. We'd love that as well. Given that we've been knocked out in the first round each of the last 2 seasons, our real goal is just to at least prove that we can win a playoff series with this team, and then let the chips fall where they may after hopefully at least getting a series victory under our belt. But we've still got 82 games before we can potentially start thinking about winning some playoff games. We will take a look at how we proceed in our next episode, when we'll take a look at the international free agents, not the Rule 5 draft, the actual amateur draft, and also probably going to spend a little bit of time looking at some potential trade candidates. We do have money to potentially spend on bringing on some salary. Got about $7 million for free agents at this point with the way that the season has gone. So we definitely have the opportunity to make some improvements to this team on the margin by hopefully making some trades over the next month, actually closer to 5 weeks, until we hit the trade deadline for this 2027 season. But we will focus on figuring all of that out in our next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching and hope you have a great day.